Good evening, I'm Ernie Anastas, and here's what's happening. Men who are tougher than most, veteran police officers, are shedding tears tonight for a rookie cop executed in cold blood. Officer Edward Byrne was just 22 years old, the son of a retired police lieutenant. Officer Byrne was shot early this morning as he sat in his parked patrol car. He was on stakeout assignment in the South Jamaica section of Queens. That portion of the 103rd Precinct is known as a drug-dealing supermarket.
The execution is being read as a bold message from drug peddlers, but tonight, heavily armed police units are patrolling South Jamaica, sending out a message of their own. Jim Dolan is live now at the scene. Jim?
Tidy on the patrol car, standing guard out here tonight, a black cross, mourning the loss of one of their youngest, one of their newest, one of their own. You know, this neighborhood here in South Jamaica is never very calm. The crack dealers and criminals make sure of that, but it is particularly tense out here tonight after the brazen, cold-blooded murder of a man who wanted only to keep this neighborhood safe. And the police mean to put the men responsible in jail, men who overpowered a young police officer here early this morning as he sat alone in his car, never getting the chance to pull his own gun. It is a mistake the police are unlikely to make again. Tonight they are armed with 9mm automatics and more. They wear bulletproof vests and they patrol the area. Other police go door to door to get some hint of what happened. But neighbors are reluctant to say much. A man who will kill a cop will kill anyone. One neighbor hung a black ribbon on a signpost to remember Edward Burns.
We have what appears to be a deliberate assassination of a police officer acting in the performance of his duty.
Burns was in his patrol car early this morning, parked in front of this man's house. He is a witness in a major drug-selling case against Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols, who now resides on Rikers Island. Police believe that it's possible that Nichols engineered this hit from his Rikers Island jail cell. The parked car pulled up with its lights off. Two men got out, and one fired into the patrol car, killing Burns, a police officer for just 4 weeks. This afternoon, police found the car in question, but a man who was near the vehicle has not been charged by police. He is being questioned. Police report that man was questioned and then later released this evening. They have arrested no one else in connection with this murder. This is not the first time that there has been violence at this home of this important drug witness. There were 2 fire bombings late last year. Nobody has been hurt before a young police officer was gunned down early this morning. Reporting live from South Jamaica, I'm Jim Dolan, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Thank you, Jim.
Landscape of 1980s New York City, the streets of Queens and Brooklyn were battlegrounds. The crack cocaine epidemic had swept through neighborhoods, amplifying violence, desperation, and criminal enterprise. From these streets emerged figures whose names would echo in headlines, courtrooms, and later in hip-hop lyrics and culture. Among them was Howard Pappy Mason, a man who became synonymous with the ruthless underworld of Queens, whose actions would shock a city and change law enforcement approaches forever. Early life, unknown origins, brutal beginnings. While official public records about Mason's early life are limited, it's established that Howard Mason was born on September 8, 1959, and grew up in a time and place where economic decline and street culture shaped young lives. What is clear from accounts is that even as a youth, Mason gravitated toward violence and confrontation, repeatedly clashing with police and authority figures, and earning a reputation for fearlessness and ferocity. Local accounts from people familiar with the era describe a young Mason cutting his teeth in street gangs, learning to fight, and rejecting authority early in life. Some narratives place him in Brooklyn's tough neighborhoods before he eventually became entrenched in the Queens underworld, from street enforcer to organized crime. By the mid-1980s, Mason had risen from petty fights and juvenile detention to become a key enforcer and gangster in Jamaica. Queens, one of the flashpoints of New York's crack cocaine wars. Here, he partnered with Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols, another formidable figure in the drug trade. Together, they led a criminal crew known as the Bibos, a network of dealers and soldiers that controlled drug distribution in significant swaths of southeast Queens. Under Mason and Nichols, the Bibos expanded their operation with remarkable efficiency. Their organization didn't just move drugs, it operated like a business, with territory, enforcement, logistics, and immense cash flow. At the height of their power, the gang reportedly brought in hundreds of thousands of dollars per month from the drug trade, financing weapons, payoffs, and a lavish lifestyle on the streets. Mason's place in this world was not as a behind-the-scenes financier, but as a frontline enforcer. feared for his willingness to use violence without hesitation. People in the streets rarely crossed him. Those who did often disappeared or were killed. The crack epidemic, a city in crisis. Through the 1980s, New York City was in the grip of one of the deadliest drug epidemics in its history. Crack cocaine spread rapidly through neighborhoods, disproportionately affecting Black and Latino communities. Violence escalated, murders soared, and law enforcement struggled to keep up. Amid this chaos, figures like Mason and Nichols were not anomalies. They were products of an era defined by inequality, economic hardship, and the unregulated flow of a highly addictive drug that fueled crime and desperation. By the late 1980s, Mason had become one of the most notorious and feared men in Queens. His reputation spread beyond his neighborhood, marking him as a central figure in New York's organized drug trade. Arrest on a gun charge, the turning point. In 1988, Mason's trajectory took a pivotal turn. He was arrested and convicted on a guns-related charge, a relatively common arrest in the era's gun-cracked streets. While he was serving time on that conviction, events unfolded that would forever define his legacy and ignite national outrage. Locked behind bars, Mason still held influence over his crew. From a telephone in jail, he continued to communicate and issue orders to members of the Bibos still active on the streets. Murder of Officer Edward Byrne, a crime that shocked a nation. On February 26, 1988, a young rookie NYC police officer, Edward Byrne, just 22 years old and weeks on the job, was sitting in his patrol car outside the home of a witness in a drug case. Without warning, a group of men approached the vehicle and shot Officer Byrne 5 times at point-blank range, killing him instantly. What made this murder especially shocking was not just the brutality, but that it was a targeted assassination, carried out on the orders of a jailed drug lord. Court records and confessions from the killers themselves indicated that Mason had ordered Byrne's execution in retaliation for his incarceration, and to send a message that the gang would not be intimidated by law enforcement. 4 men, Philip Copeland, Todd Scott, Scott Cobb, and David McClary, were convicted of Byrne's murder. At their trials, some acknowledged that the killing was carried out on Mason's orders. The crime reverberated across the city and nation. Byrne's death became a symbol of the lawlessness gripping New York, a call to arms for police reform and anti-drug enforcement. Political leaders, including then Vice President George H.W. Bush, referenced the crime in discussions of national policy and the need for stricter sentencing and penalties, federal investigation, and historic conviction. In the wake of the murder, federal prosecutors escalated their efforts to build a case against Mason. In December 1989, he was convicted on federal charges that included racketeering and ordering the murder of Officer Byrne, an extraordinary achievement given the difficulty in prosecuting criminal orders from prison. Mason's conviction was not straightforward. Legal wrangling over his mental competency and his ability to stand trial stretched over several years. Nonetheless, in 1994, he was ultimately sentenced to life in federal prison, a sentence that reflected the gravity of his crimes and the symbolic need to demonstrate that no one, not even a crime boss issuing orders from behind bars, was above the law. He began serving his sentence at ADX Florence, a maximum security federal penitentiary in Colorado known as one of the toughest prisons in America, before later being transferred to other facilities. Impact on family and criminal network. Mason's criminal enterprise did not end with his incarceration. In 1990, his mother, Claudia Mason, was convicted on drug trafficking charges, accused of running his crack operation in Queens while he was behind bars. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison before her release in 1998. Meanwhile, the wider network of the Bibos and allied gangs continued to collapse under law enforcement pressure. The murder of Byrne had intensified police focus on Queens' drug trade, leading to multiple arrests and the eventual dismantling of Mason's criminal empire. Cultural legacy, beyond crime. Despite his incarceration, Pappy Mason entered American cultural memory, particularly through music. Rappers like Nas, 50 Cent, and others referenced Mason and his era in their lyrics, framing him variously as a cautionary icon of street life or a symbol of defiance against the establishment. Songs like The World Is Yours by Nas make direct lyrical nods to Mason's name, linking his infamy with the broader narrative of struggle in inner-city America. These references illustrate how Mason's story did not disappear with his imprisonment. but instead became part of the fabric of hip-hop storytelling and cultural reflection on crime, poverty, and survival. Conclusion: a life that left scars. Howard "Pappy" Mason's life is a stark illustration of the intersecting forces of poverty, violence, organized crime, and the crack epidemic that shaped New York in the late 20th century. From street enforcer to gang leader to convicted murderer, his path encapsulates how individuals can rise within criminal hierarchies and the catastrophic consequences that follow. The murder of Officer Edward Byrne remains one of the most horrific and consequential crimes of the era, a chilling reminder of how the drug wars didn't just devastate communities, but also claimed the lives of those sworn to protect them. Mason's life sentence, the collapse of his network, and his enduring infamy show a narrative of power and downfall that continues to resonate today.